Campside Media.
Hey, Campside listeners. Welcome to Inside the Tent, our series where we go behind the mic of our hit podcasts. I'm Anthony Pacillo, and I work on the film and TV side of Campside, helping to turn our series into screen adaptations, which is one of the reasons I'm here today hosting for the first time, because Go Boy is just exploding with so much adaptation potential. I also lived in Ontario for 5 years. Look out, just like our host Sam Mullins, the acclaimed, award-winning Sam Mullins, the host of our show, which we're going to talk to you about today, Go Boy. If you want more exclusive content or behind-the-scenes anecdotes from our shows, make sure to go to joincampside.com to become a free member of the Campside community. That's joincampside.com. Sam, I'll let you take it away. My first question to you is, what draws you to such kaleidoscopic characters that have so many chapters throughout their lives? We're talking about Roger, Mad Dog, Caron. What an astonishing life he's led. Robbed 78 banks by my last tally, an unfathomable 13 prison escapes on his record. And that's not even really what made him famous in your home country. These are the men and women that you seem to love.
Oh, yeah. That's funny how you put it, chapters. It's like, yes, that is a thing that I gravitate towards, is people that have these insane, seemingly unrelated chapters in their life. Like the way that Go Boy started was actually my collaborator on it, Rob. He listened to my other Campside show, Dr. Dante. And when he listened to Dr. Dante, he was like, oh my God, we have to do this format, but for Roger Caron, because it's a story that spans decades, and there's like the prison years, the bank robbing years, the writing years, the celebrity years, the sort of like motivational speaker years, and then this sort of return to crime that's very interesting. And Dante's was a similar one, where his final chapter was sort of him trying to scam people one last time, even though he was just kind of this down and out old guy that he couldn't move on stage in a very lithe way anymore, but he was still doing these performances. So I get why my friend Rob came to me in the first place and was like, you need to read this book about this guy and then tell me if you think that we have a podcast here. And I read that book and I was like, how has this not already been a podcast? How has this not already been an Academy Award winning Hollywood film? How do we not all know Roger Caron, given how insane his story was?
To set the table for our audience a little bit just about Roger's life, two-part question. What did you know about Roger before any of this? And what did you learn about him over the course of reporting that surprised you the most?
I didn't know anything about Roger Caron when Rob came to me with Roger's memoir, Go Boy. So when I read that book, it is such an excellent read. Really electric sentences, and the way that he writes, it just feels so cinematic and immersive. Like you're there with him on these high stakes heists, and your back is against the wall with these guys with their prison shanks out trying to stab you in juvie or whatever. It's so immersive, and it's a very violent book because just the nature of jumping through these windows and getting into all these fistfights and being present for a prison riot, things like that. So I read the book, but then when I started watching all of this wonderful archival tape that we have of Roger telling his story after the success of the book, he did like hundreds of interviews. Lots of them were on the CBC, and my collaborator, Rob Lindsay, he had all of these exclusive interviews with Roger toward the end of his life. And the thing that really surprised me and drew me closer to Roger is that he's a real sweetheart. Like, he's not this violent bad man. Like, every woman who he dated, all of his family members, guys that he served time with in prison, everyone's like, I love Roger. he is a wonderful, easy to be around person, and he has a good heart. And that was something that didn't fully come through in his book, but it was really delightful. And as a central character for a podcast series, like that's the feedback that I've been getting, is that he's very easy to root for, even though he had to withstand all this punishment and all of these violent, horrific things that happened to him in his life.
That was one of the first indicators to me that he was maybe a secret sweetie, was his relationship with his sister Sue.
Oh yeah.
And obviously Roger is the beating heart of Go Boy. Are there any other characters like Sue or anybody in that broader constellation that you'd flag as either a personal favorite or a character for listeners to look out for?
Yeah. So Roger, he comes to writing. He kind of teaches himself how to write when he was in solitary confinement. And then he would just write and write and write. It was sort of a form of therapy for him, where it wasn't intended for him to have readers. He's just like, I have all of this noise in my head that I need to get out onto the page. And then once he started accumulating hundreds of pages of this manuscript, he had to show it to someone, and he showed it to a guy who volunteered at the prisons and would teach like the inmate English classes and stuff. And I love this guy as a character because Roger was raw talent as a creative person and as a writer, but he needed someone to help smooth it out and to help him with structure. Like the voice was there, the storytelling was there, but it was kind of a mess. So he needed this really brilliant, very well-read sort of English teacher to get what is special about Roger and to help package it and prepare it for a large audience that it eventually had when it did go to publishing. So that's one of my favorite characters, is this teacher that helped Roger. And I think he was an emotional support also, and sort of like a therapist. He was kind of everything that Roger needed to get this thing out into the world.
Do you think Roger was just a uniquely emotionally sophisticated guy, even from childhood? Or did that kind of come about in prison with all, he's spending 2-year stretches in the hole? Is that where he reaches some kind of emotional sophistication? Is it after? Is it during the course of writing the book, like you're saying with this mentor?
I'm not sure if he ever reached emotional sophistication, but what is so special about Roger is that I think his experience of the world is so different from anyone else's. And it's like he had such a incredible motor drive. He would just go and go and go. The way that he experienced the world, it was like he was trapped in an action film everywhere that he went. And he gets so animated when he tells these stories. I will say that when he did get his book out into the world and he was the celebrated author, that I think that did, at least temporarily, really mellow him and make him like turn down the volume on what his experience had been. And I think he found the closest that he ever had to peace when he didn't have to worry about money and everyone adored him and everyone was impressed with him. And I think he really loved telling his story, and he saw the power of his story, and he recognized that his story was not just his story, that he was telling the story of lots of inmates who don't have this gift for writing and this drive that he has to get it out there. So I think it was like this humbling thing where his book comes out and he's like, I need to be very solid and straight-laced and come across as more well-adjusted than I perhaps am, because everyone is looking at me and I can change the way that people look at other inmates. So for a while, I think he did settle into that role, but I don't know. It was hard to not live a day-to-day life that was fueled by fear and excitement. I think he got bored after the wave crashed of his celebrity.
Well, he, of course, had a gift for writing, and thank God for the podcast. He had a gift for speaking.
Yeah.
I was so struck by his ability. I think this is what I may be talking about when I'm saying emotional sophistication, because he's so unvarnished and he's so real about his experiences and who he is and everything he went through. And he's got such command of that. It's astonishing, honestly.
Yeah. What I love about watching Roger speak is that he has no shame about being honest. Like, he owns everything that he's ever done. He's like, you know what? I did scare people when I would pull a gun out in a bank and rob the bank. And I got into lots of fights and lots of trouble in prison. And sometimes I was in the right and sometimes I was in the wrong. But just because I'm telling you the story doesn't mean that I'm going to make myself out to be a hero. Like, it was very important to him that he was presenting an accurate, flawed version of himself in his writing and the way that people talk about him and tell his story. Like, that was something that Roger said to my collaborator, Rob Lindsay, when they had their time together. And he gave his blessing to Rob to continue telling his story, because he didn't have much time left. He said, remember, like, I'm not a hero. I'm not a heroic person. I was just someone trying to survive. And boy, did he survive.
Did he ever? Talk about thriving. I mean, were the 80s when he was really, when his star was on the rise, when he's living in that penthouse overlooking Parliament in Ottawa? That was really the peak of Roger's thriving.
Yeah, I think the early 80s is when he gets the great hi-fi equipment and he buys the Trans Am with the big Firebird hood. I think he said that he did over 200 interviews in that year and a half period. That was the height of his powers. And that's where he was also kind of like a sex symbol. It's like, what is more appealing than a sensitive king of the literary world who's also the definition of bad boy? He's ripped because he's addicted to lifting weights. He's so sweet with his family. His best friend is his sister. It's like, he's an all-time heartthrob. And he made up for lost time during that era with his relationships. And the funny thing about it is we've heard tape with lots of women that he was with during that time. And all of them are like, nothing but nice things to say about him. He's a wonderful man.
Well, that's a good segue into another question, which is, well, so you've got 200 interviews during that era. Again, another blessing for a podcast. Are there things outside of the official record, conversations like that with women that he dated? What are your favorite tidbits that didn't get in to the podcast for whatever reason? Because you couldn't, because there wasn't enough space?
Ooh, that's a good question. One thing that was really funny is we did the tour of the Kingston Penitentiary Prison. And the tour guides at the Kingston Pen are old guards. That this is like their retirement job, where they go and give tours and talk about how hard this prison used to be when they worked there. And on that tour, lots of these guys were like, Roger made up a whole bunch of that stuff. Like when he was talking about how the riot went down and what he was up to and how violent that riot was, he fabricated most of this stuff. And a bunch of guys said that to us. And I was like, oh, well, sure, grain of salt. Like, I wasn't taking everything they said as the gospel. So then one interview that we did for one of our bonus episodes was with this woman who she wrote the definitive book about the Kingston Penitentiary riot. And we were kind of scared to talk to this academic because we're like, oh, is she going to say that it really didn't go down this way? Because we built whole episodes around Roger's accounting of it. And she said that she has essentially fact-checked Roger's book, and it is exactly what happened. She has interviewed like dozens of guys that were there and some of the other guards, and the way that the violence unfolded in the order that Roger lays it out was all fact-checked, cleared, solid. And there were lots of times where we're like, okay, I can feel Roger kind of stretching what the truth must have been in this part. But then you would find an old document that would corroborate it, like in an unrelated book about being in the prison. You're like, wow, it really did happen in this way, So that was like a really fun surprise throughout. That I don't know if it comes through in the podcast, but that was one thing that I really liked, were the things that I was scared to include because I'm like, this can't possibly be true. We would find out that it is corroborated and confirmed.
Incredible. I have to ask you, as a part of the TV and film team here at Campside, not to put you on the spot, do you have a dream version of a movie or a TV series that you've always seen coming out of Go Boy?
I have always imagined this story as like, it wants to be a gritty HBO limited series. This is always how I have seen it. And we have had lots of discussions about who should play Roger. And the best that we can agree with is sort of like from his era, like young Brando, young Dustin Hoffman. But it's like, who can do it now? Because like maybe even when Zach Braff was like a little bit younger, or we could make him a little bit less handsome, but it has to be someone who's compact and ripped and can be athletically explosive, but also be very tender. And if you did make the series, you would have to be able to age them up and age them down in a convincing way. But yeah, I've always imagined it as a dark, fun HBO limited series with lots of action, lots of heists, lots of jailbreaks.
And then I have to ask, I don't know if you would know this, just because I know Roger himself chased a movie adaptation. Do we have any idea what Roger's dream version would have been?
I think he wanted it to be a film, like a feature. I don't know if we told you the story about this before, but the film rights were bought. And that was the biggest check that Roger ever got, as far as I can tell. It was selling the movie rights to Go Boy when it first hit in like the late 70s or early 80s. And it was going to be literally the biggest budget Canadian film ever made at that time. And they'd secured all of the locations and everything. And Roger was very much a part of the creative team. And he was so excited about it. And it was his favorite thing to talk about. But then an election went the wrong way. And then all of these film tax credits that either the province of Ontario or Canada had set aside to fund this big budget movie suddenly disappeared. And it is still, to me, so shocking that this movie wasn't made, because you read it and it's just the Shawshank Redemption. It's a heist movie. In my head, it was always like a cross between Shawshank Redemption and I really like that Ben Affleck film, The Town. It kind of feels like if those two movies had a baby, is what Go Boy wants to be.
I love it. You'll have to indulge me because I have my version. You'll know where I'm going with this. I'll be quick.
I'm ready.
Tuesday, March 31st, 1992. We're on a public bus, and you've got this sweet older gentleman. He's narrating the entire story, and it's only in the end, somebody kicks down the door of the bus. Do you realize the guy with a dozen chapters in his life actually has a baker's dozen because he just robbed a Zeller's, and he's actually been in an escape. The whole narration on the bus has been an escape in progress. I mean, till the very end, this guy.
Yeah.
Chasing something that you could never get.
Yeah. I think he just always needed to try and get away with something. His obsession with bank robbing is so exactly the same as his obsession about breaking out of prison. Like, he just loved thinking about the logistics of it. I think that's when I imagine Roger's mind, it was like 90% escape room. Like, he just wanted to imagine, like, what time of day do we show up with? What kind of crew do we build? How do I get a grappling hook? I think he just loved the problem solving of bank robbing and jailbreaking. And when you take that away, what are you supposed to do with that really well-trained muscle? Like, what are you supposed to do? He tried skydiving. He tried learning how to fly. And then he's like, flying's not really doing it. Maybe I'll only go flying when there's electrical storms. Maybe I'll land a little bit more roughly than my flight instructor is comfortable with. He just needed the adrenaline, and it never went away to the day that he died.
Thanks so much to the always delightful Sam Mullins and the rest of the All-Star Go Boy team. And thank you all for hanging out inside the tent with us today. If you haven't already, don't forget to go to joincampside.com to become a free member of the Campside community. That's joincampside.com. Thanks.